After his little break in verses 12 to 14, which we considered together last week, his comfort and encouragement to us in regard to our faith, John now returns to his hard-hitting challenges. And he here warns his little children not to love the world. He's really continuing to give us the tests of genuine faith. He's given us a description of what a true Christian is, someone who has a true, genuine, saving faith in Christ. And he tells us that such a person is someone who does not love the world. I want us to consider that together this morning. So first, three things. First of all, the description of the world. The description of the world. If we are being warned here not to love the world, it is very important that we understand what the world is. Sometimes we have this idea that the world is just the disco and the pub and the nightclub. If we don't go to those places, then we are not worldly. But according to the Bible's description of the world, there are many, many people who would never darken the door of such places, and yet they are still worldly people. And I trust that before we're finished this morning, we will understand and recognize that there are elements of worldliness in all of us this morning. And the warning is for us not to love the world. So what is the world that John is talking about here that we are not to love? Someone has defined the world as the invisible spiritual system that is opposed to God and Christ and organized by Satan. I'll repeat that. The invisible spiritual system that is opposed to God and Christ and organized by Satan. We use the word world in the sense of a system in our daily lives. We turn on the TV or the radio and we hear the announcer saying, "We bring you the news from the world of sports." Now, what is the world of sports? The world of sports is an organized system that is made up of a set of ideas, people, purposes, and activities. The world of sports is a system in that system you have ideas. Ideas concerning each particular sport, how they should be played and so on. You also have people who organize the games and people who play those games. You also have activities. There are things going on as the games are being played. And you also have purposes. There is a purpose behind each particular sport. So the world of sports is an organized system made up of a set of ideas, people, activities, and purposes. We talk about the world of finance or the world of politics. And these are systems of their own. Behind what we see in sports or finance or politics, there is an invisible system, and it's a system that keeps the whole thing going. If there wasn't an organized system in sports, then things couldn't keep going. In the Bible, the world is Satan's system for opposing the work of Christ here on earth. The world is the ideas, the people, the activities, and the purposes that are in this world and that are opposing Christ and his work. All around us, there are ideas that are blatantly opposed to God and to his word. There are people who are acting constantly against God. And there are purposes and there are activities that are opposed to God. That's the world, friends. Whenever God made the world at the beginning, it was perfect. Man was created in the likeness and the image of God. God made man to glorify him. Man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. And that's how the world was at the beginning. Man knew God. He he had perfect fellowship with God. He glorified God in all that he did. There were no ideas around that were opposed to God. There were no activities going on in the world that were against God and against his word. It was a perfect world system. But then sin came into God's perfect world. Satan and man rebelled against God. And Satan is now using people in the world and all of the purposes and activities that are going on in the world. Satan is using those to rebel against God. This is why we live in such a sad and confused world. This is why behind the laughter and the smiling faces of our young people on the streets, there is so much emptiness and sadness. This is why we have all of the sad and tragic things that are happening in our world. We will never understand the world in which we live and what's going on in it unless we understand that there is a great conflict going on between Satan and God. Satan is using the world system to attack God. You see, friends, Satan does not want God to be glorified through your life and through mine. And so that is why he is always tempting us with worldly things. That is why the world is ever before us, and those temptations are always there, because Satan does not want your life and mine to honor and to glorify God. So Satan is always working to create a corrupt world. He wants that corrupt world to appeal to us and to our flesh so that we can be drawn away from God, that Satan can get us to sin, and that in turn will detract from glory being brought to God. So, the description of the world, as we see it here in the Bible, is that it's an organized system that hates and openly defies God and his Son. John 15, verse 18, Jesus said, "If the world hate you, ye know that it hated me before it hated you." There's the real heart of what the world is, and what John is telling us here this morning. As believers, we should not love. It is that which is against God, that which hates Christ and hates God. We are not to love the world, because the world is no friend of God or of grace. It's our avowed enemy. So that's the description of the world. But then secondly, not only the description of the world, but the distinctives of the world. The distinctives or the marks of the world. John gives us here in verse 16 the distinctives or the marks of the world. It says in verse 16, "For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, and the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world." The world that we as believers are not to love is the world where the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, and the pride of life dominate and control and shape life and the course of life. John, in giving us these distinctives of the world, is emphasizing the fact that worldliness is much more and goes much deeper than merely the things that people do and the places that they go. How often that idea has been presented, the world is just simply the things we do and the places that we go to. But worldliness goes much, much deeper than that. Worldliness goes to the motives and the attitudes of our minds and our wills. And you see, it's those motives and those attitudes that ultimately dictate what we do and where we go. Our affections, our desires, are either set on this world or they are set on God himself. It is absolutely impossible to love both. It's interesting to note that these three distinctives of the world that John gives us here are the very same things that seduced Adam and Eve there in the garden at the beginning. It's very possible that John had those opening verses in Genesis chapter 3 in mind whenever he wrote this verse here. So what are the distinctives of the world that John sets before us here? Well, first of all, the first one is the lust of the flesh. The lust of the flesh. This refers to all that panders to our appetites. God made us all with physical appetites. So those appetites are not evil in themselves. The sexual desire for food and so on, those are physical appetites that God created us with. Appetites that in themselves are absolutely good. They are God-given and they are essential for the continuance of life. But the problem is we now have what John calls here the flesh, the sinful nature, a fallen sinful nature. And what our fallen sinful nature wants to do, and we see this the world over, what our sinful fallen nature wants to do is to turn those physical appetites into a god. Instead of worshiping the God who gave us and has blessed us with those physical appetites, what we do is we worship those appetites and we make them an end in themselves. That's why we see gluttony, illicit sex, and all of these things so rampant in our world. The world turns selfish craving into a god. John is not condemning pleasure here in itself. God made us for pleasure and for enjoyment. But that pleasure and enjoyment is to be found ultimately in God himself. You will never know true pleasure or enjoyment unless you are putting God absolutely first in your life, till you first of all know him, and then you are putting him first in your life, and you're finding your joy and your satisfaction in him, in who he is, in your relationship with him. And you see, your physical appetites are just to be a help and an aid to you in your worshiping of God and finding your satisfaction in him. Those appetites are not to be an end in themselves. The world that John is condemning here is the system that makes my pleasure and not God's glory the main goal and pursuit of life, the reason for my existence. This was exactly Eve's downfall there at the beginning. Genesis 3 and 6 says, "And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food," that forbidden fruit that Eve was looking at there that day, she looked at it and she saw that it was good for food. That forbidden fruit was good for food, meaning that it was appealing to the physical, bodily appetites. And what Eve did that day was she put her desire, what was physically appealing to her, she put that above the revealed will of God. You see, God had forbidden that fruit to her. It was not to be taken. But what she did was she put her desire for that food, she put that above the revealed will of God. That took priority over what God wanted. God gave us our physical appetites. They are gifts from him. But when we take those physical appetites and those good gifts and we make them ends in themselves, what we are doing is we are making our pleasure and satisfaction the ultimate goal of our existence. That's why we live in a pleasure-mad world this morning, and yet a world that is not satisfied. It is because they are making pleasure what is physically appealing to them. They're making that their God. They're making that the goal of their existence. They're making pleasure their God. 2 Timothy 3 and verse 4, talking about the end times, last days, it says, men shall be lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God. And is that not a perfect description of what is happening around us this morning? People love their pleasure more than they love God. This is the world that's depicted to us in the TV soaps and in a lot of modern day entertainment. That's why we ought not to be sitting filling our minds with that rubbish, because what we are doing is we are allowing the world to influence our minds. And it doesn't take too long until the world controls our minds, controls our thinking. That world that's presented to us on our TV screens, it's a world where God and His Son and sin and eternity are rejected and set aside. And in their place is put selfish desire, gratification. Those are the all supreme and important things. Dear friend, if you want to get nearer to God, if you want to know what it is to find your satisfaction and your joy in God Himself, you will not find it, and you will not be helped and encouraged to that sitting day after day filling your mind with the rubbish of the world. You'll not. You want to have a greater hatred of sin? You will not get it by filling your mind with the things of the world. You want to be more sensitive to eternity and what is of eternal value? You will not get it in the world. You will only get it in God Himself. So that's the first distinctive or mark of the world that John gives us here, the lust of the flesh. The second distinctive or mark of the world is the lust of the eyes. The lust of the eyes. And this refers to the tendency to be deceived by appearances. If it looks good, it must be good. In the superficial age in which we live, outward appearance and presentation are much more important than substance. And again, this was Eve's downfall there at the beginning. Genesis 3 and 6 says, she saw that the tree was pleasant to the eyes. Pleasant to the eyes. The forbidden fruit was appealing to the emotions. There was something about it that made you appreciate its beauty. The whole world of advertising is geared to seduce us by images that really sidestep our minds and rational thinking and entice our eyes and our emotions. Again, I would encourage you, don't sit filling your mind with those advertisements that keep coming up. Turn them off if need be whenever they come on. Because what those advertisements are doing is they are they're enticing your mind with these images, these glamorous images of what life would possibly be like if you were to buy that product or whatever. What it's doing is, what's really happening is it's the world enticing you through the eyes, through what you see. I see it, I want it, I'll have it. That's the lust of the eyes. Another distinctive of the world. Then the third distinctive or mark of the world is the pride of life. The pride of life. This refers to the false attraction and glamour of the world, with its emphasis on material possessions. Material possessions that do not last, that pass away, an empty human glory. Luke 12 and verse 15, Jesus said, a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. And yet the world would have us believe this morning that it does, that life does consist in the abundance of the things which we possess. Get more things Strive to get a greater status in life, or portray a better image of yourself, and then you will be truly living. Again, this was part of Eve's downfall. Genesis 3 and 6 says she saw that it was a tree to be desired to make one wise. She reached out in her pride to take possession of what she thought would improve and enrich her life. But it was forbidden. It was not for her good. It would be for her destruction to take that fruit. God had forbidden it. Yet in her pride, she reached out to take it, thinking that she was going to take something that would enrich and improve her life. Friends, this is the world that we are not to love. John says, if any man love the world, verse 15, the love of the Father is not in him. If we are in love with the world this morning, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, if these are the things that our hearts are really upon, the things that this old world is attracting us with, then John tells us the love of the Father is not in us. It is impossible to love God and to love the world at the same time. James 4 and verse 4, ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. To love the world, to be a friend of the world, James tells us, means to be an enemy of God. You cannot reconcile the love of the world with love for God. If you really love God this morning, if He is the ultimate and the supreme one for you and in your life, if He's the one that your heart is truly set upon, the one that you love with all of your heart because you know what He has done for you, you rejoice in the reality of His great salvation that He provided for you, bringing you back to Himself. If you really, really love Him, you will not love the world. It really comes down to the first commandment. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. God will not have any rivals, especially rivals that defy and despise Him. And that's what the world does. The world defies and despises God. You know, a man who truly loves his wife would not enjoy the company and promote the interests of someone who despised and ridiculed his wife, would they? And yet that is what many Christians are doing in regard to the Lord whom they profess to love. They are enjoying the company and they are promoting the interests of the world, which despises, ridicules, shakes its fist in the face of God. How can we do it? How can we possibly court the love and friendship of the world if we profess to know and love God this morning? The description of the world, the distinctives of the world, and then thirdly, the destination of the world. The destination of the world. Verse 17, John says, and the world passeth away, and the lust thereof, but he that doeth the will of God abideth forever. This whole system called the world that is opposed to God, it is passing away. It's not here forever. Peter says in 2 Peter 3 and verse 10, the earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. He's referring there to what is going to happen at the second coming of Christ someday. The earth, he says, and the works that are therein, all that's going on in this old world, this whole system that is opposed to God, all of these purposes, activities, ideas that are all around us that are so blatantly against God. Peter says when Christ comes again at the final day, this old earth and the works, all of it, is going to be burned up. There's coming a day when all that's going on in this old world, all that is opposed to God, is going to be burned up. It's going to be destroyed. It has its day. But one day, God is going to destroy it all. Don't get too weighed down, child of God, when you see the reality of the world and its defiance of God. Yes, it does grieve us when we look around us and see the antagonism toward God and the things of God. It seems like people are getting more blazing in their rebellion against, their defiance of God. But don't get too weighed down with that, because realize it's all going to pass away. It's here. It has this little day. God in his infinite wisdom is allowing it for a little time. One day the trumpet will sound. Christ will step into our world again. And this earth and the works that are therein, all of this rebellion against him is going to be put to an end. It will be no more. Think of the world in Noah's day. They were eating, they were drinking, they were marrying, they were giving in marriage. In other words, they were just doing as they pleased. They didn't want God in their lives. They weren't wanting to listen to an old fool of a preacher telling them that there was judgment coming. And then what happened? The flood came and took them all away. There was no more partying, no more loose living. The flood ended it all. You know, no one likes to support a lost cause, do they? Who wants to support a team that's always going to lose? And yet the majority of people love this old world and delight to be a part of this old wicked system that is opposed to God, when all the time its days are numbered. It's going to pass away. It's a lost cause. It is doomed to destruction and all who are a part of it. If we were to really see the final end of this old world system and its eternal judgment, then we would never be tempted by its lust. The pleasures of this old world and of sin are only for a season. They are doomed for the lake of fire. But John says, in verse 17, but he that doeth the will of God abideth forever. To do God's will, to love, honor, serve, and obey God will mean that you will have a reward that will last forever. I am so glad that my lot is cast in this morning with those who love God and not with those who love this old world. To love and serve God, to cling to him, to hold fast to him, for his cause to be the thing that I want to live for above everything else, in spite of how difficult and how hard it might be. Friends, that is the most blessed thing on earth. There is no other life ultimately worth living, and there is no other master ultimately worth serving. And this will be our blessed portion, not just for the little short time we're in this world, but forever. This is eternal. He that doeth the will of God abideth forever. Forever and forever. We will love and serve him in his presence. To cling to God in this life will mean that one day we will enter into the joy of our Lord in heaven. And 10 million years from now, we will still be in that joy. Let's see the world this morning, friends, for what it really is and what it is doomed for. And let's hate it with all of our hearts. Let us see the blessedness of loving and serving God forever. Oh, if you're not saved this morning, realize that you are being deceived by the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life. You're a part of that old wicked world system that's doomed for destruction. Oh, come over to the side of the people of God. Become a child of God through trusting in Christ today, and know what it is to serve the Lord. He that doeth the will of God abideth forever. Come into the blessed service of the King of Kings, our precious Lord and Saviour, and know what it is to be in that service forever. When everything else around us has passed away and is no more, we will be in the presence of God to serve Him forever and forever. Make sure that you're amongst the people of God today, those who are doing the will of God out of appreciation for what He has done for you in salvation. May God raise the challenge of His word upon our hearts this morning.